Before we dive in, drop a quick hi in the comments. It may seem small, but trust me, it really helps YouTube share this story with more sci-fi fans like us. I'd love to see who's watching. To the representatives of United Earth, Relzar began, his voice smooth, almost amused. We acknowledge your prior cooperation. Commencing the next cycle, designated council fleets will begin regulated extraction of Earth's marine biomass and mineral crust. Timetables are attached. Compliance is assumed. Malcolm Ashford stood with his hands behind his back as the holographic transmission flickered into the center of the United Earth Defense Chamber. The seal of the Galactic Council spun once, then dissolved into the face of High Consul Relzar. A Thalvani, tall and skeletal, tall and regal, with segmented emerald skin that shimmered faintly under the holographic light. Lidless eyes that blinked out of sync above a mouth that never quite closed. Relzar offered a slow, calculated smile. This is not merely an honor. It is a responsibility. Your world will finally serve a purpose greater than itself. The transmission ended. Ashford's body tensed, the muscles in his face holding back the words everyone else wanted to spit. He didn't blink. Around him, the silence fractured as murmurs turned into voices, and voices edged toward outrage. Admiral Henrik Sato stepped forward, his face carved from stone. He just assigned a harvest date, like we're farmland. General Marcus Greer slammed a gloved fist onto the console. They're not asking anymore. They never were, said Ashford, finally turning. A soft tone echoed through the chamber as a second set of doors opened. More leaders entered, military commanders, global defense ministers, strategic advisors. No journalists, no cameras. Just men used to making choices the rest of the planet wasn't ready to hear. General Tobias Nguyen, head of orbital logistics, took his seat without a word. Across from him, Admiral Rahman crossed his arms, his eyes locked on the now blank holographic display. Ashford raised his voice. We're live. Level 4 protocols. This council is in emergency session. The chamber dimmed slightly, bringing full focus to the central platform. Holograms sparked to life above each representative's station, fleet positions, energy resource maps, political affiliations across the council. Ashford stepped forward. Let's skip ceremony. You all saw it. They didn't even pretend to negotiate, said Nguyen. Because they think we won't do anything. Rahman added. Ashford nodded. They see hesitation. That's not their fault. It's ours. They've been softening us up for years, said Greer. First they taxed our colonies, then our off-world trade. Now they want our oceans. What's next? The marrow in our bones. It's not just policy anymore, said Sato. It's conquest with paperwork. They expect us to protest and fold, Nguyen muttered. Again. Ashford's voice was level, but steel-edged. They think we're too divided, too bureaucratic, too human. And maybe we are, said Rahman. But they still underestimate what that means. Ashford turned back to the center. I'll go. Nguyen blinked. What? Ashford stepped fully onto the central floor. I'll return to the council. In person. We request a special session, face to face. You think that'll work? Asked Greer. No, Ashford replied. But I'm not going there to plead. I'm going to put this on the record. Sato crossed his arms. They'll call it defiance. They already have. Rahman looked up. What if they don't let you leave? Ashford didn't hesitate. Then we'll know exactly what we're dealing with. Greer leaned forward. You realize what happens if they detain you? Ashford looked him dead in the eye. Then they make my point for me. Nguyen's jaw clenched. And the rest of us? You prepare, Ashford said. Quietly, thoroughly, no announcements. If there's even a chance to stop this without blood, I'll take it. But if not, he looked to Sato. We make damn sure we're ready. The room fell into a weighted pause. Then Rahman spoke. You'll need a diplomatic team, light escort only. Ashford nodded. 5 diplomats, myself included, and a small crew. No major weapons, no threats, just eyes and ears. Sato moved toward a side console. We'll prep a stealth corridor. No media. No civilian chatter. I'll coordinate the launch. Ashford didn't smile, but his voice softened by half a degree. Thank you. He walked toward the outgoing communications terminal. With a breath, he activated the line to the Galactic Council. Seconds passed. Then the seal appeared again, shifting into Relzar's face. Ah, Chancellor Ashford, the Thalvani drawled. Your silence was beginning to feel familiar. I'm requesting a special session, Ashford said. Emergency status, in person. Off-screen, the shape of another counselor leaned into frame. Marnexian, thick exoskeletal ridges. No greeting, just a stare. After a long pause, Relzar tilted his head slightly. Your arrival is anticipated. We shall accommodate. The feed cut. Ashford turned from the screen. We move now. 2 days later, the launch platform was surrounded by silence and steel. No cameras, no flags. Just cold air and the low hum of distant generators. The diplomatic shuttle stood on the pad, golden-shelled, low profile, built for speed and subtlety, not defense. Ashford stood near the ramp, his coat flapping in the wind. Sato approached with quick, measured steps. Your transponder's clean. Direct corridor to council space, no detours. Ashford nodded. And if we lose contact? You won't. Rahman followed close behind, offering a small case. Encrypted relay, short range only, just in case you need to say something fast. Ashford took it without comment. Behind them, the other 4 delegates boarded one by one. Envoys Keller and Dawes, both stone-faced veterans of interspecies diplomacy, and 2 aides, Lorne and Wexler, former analysts turned field observers. The shuttle's small crew was already inside, silent and sharp-eyed. No rookies, no dead weight. Sato kept his voice low. If they try anything, if they so much as twitch wrong, then you'll know what to do, Ashford finished. Rahman gave a tight nod. Don't give them a reason. I won't, Ashford said. But they've already written the ending. I'm just walking them to the stage. Greer, arriving last, offered a rare grunt of approval. Let them look into your eyes when they try to explain this garbage. Ashford offered one last glance to the men he'd spent decades building trust with. Keep Earth steady. Don't react. Not yet. Sato's voice was calm. We'll be ready. Ashford turned, walked up the ramp, and entered the shuttle. The hatch sealed behind him with a deep thud. Seconds later, the engines ignited, and the ship lifted through the clouds. No broadcast, no anthem. Just 5 men leaving Earth for a chamber full of vipers. The shuttle drifted into the outer perimeter of Council space under full diplomatic transponder status. Escort ships, sleek, crescent-shaped, marked with the Council's emblem, flanked them without a word. No comms, just presence. Malcolm Ashford stood at the viewport, arms crossed behind his back, watching the looming structure ahead. The Citadel of Accord wasn't built for beauty. It was massive, layered, constructed like a layered fortress masquerading as bureaucracy. Tall, spiked towers lined its outer ring, each one representing a founding species. Ships of various makes orbited lazily around it, some docked, others idling. Each design was alien, but the formation? That was unmistakably defensive. Keller joined him by the glass. Friendly welcome. Ashford didn't look at him. Feels like they already know what I'll say. Then say it anyway, Keller said. Loud enough they can't pretend they didn't hear. The shuttle docked with a shudder. A mechanical hiss filled the air as the ramp lowered into a receiving bay, bathed in cool, sterile light. Waiting at the bottom stood a welcoming party, 8 guards in ceremonial armor and 1 diplomatic aide. The aide stepped forward. She was Hilari, tall, serpentine, with translucent green skin and a spiraled head crest. Her voice was musical but distant. Chancellor Ashford, welcome back to the Citadel of Accord. The High Consul awaits you in session. Your credentials have been logged. Please surrender external comlinks and personal defense devices. Ashford handed over a small case. We brought words, not weapons. She bowed slightly and turned. Follow me. The walk through the station was a parade of quiet tension. Ornate banners hung from polished walls, displaying the crests of over 40 species. Some Ashford recognized. Some he didn't. Every hallway had guards posted, the kind who didn't smile, the kind who watched everything and said nothing. They were led through a tall chamber that opened into the council's core, a wide circular hall with a stepped floor leading down into a pit, ringed with tiered seats, each occupied by a councillor or their proxy. The chamber lights dimmed. Spotlights tracked Ashford and his team as they descended. In the center, atop the raised platform, stood High Consul Relzar. His segmented green skin caught the light with a subtle ripple, and his narrow eyes blinked out of sync beneath the jaw who looks as if always holding back a smile, or something worse. To his right, the Marnexian counselor stood motionless, his armor-like shell ridged and dull, face obscured behind a heavy bone mask fused to his upper frame. Another, draped in layered robes, had rows of violet feathers that twitched slightly with every breath, and narrow-hooked fingers that drummed against the stone desk in rhythmic impatience. The third, lanky and pale with jointless limbs and a face that pulsed around a cluster of moving tendrils, watched Ashford without blinking, head tilted at an unnatural angle. "Chancellor Ashford," Relzar said, voice amplified but calm. "Your punctuality is noted. Speak." Ashford stepped forward, voice steady. "I stand before this council on behalf of the people of Earth. Your recent declaration, to begin harvesting Earth's oceans and resources, was made without negotiation, without consent, and without respect." A ripple moved through the chamber. Some councillors leaned forward. Others reclined, visibly disinterested. Ashford continued. "We are still members of this council. We have honored treaties, paid tariffs, supported joint operations, and we have voiced concerns, many of them, consistently ignored." The Jevikari councillor clicked her beak and smirked. "And now you fly here with outrage in your voice and expect the council to what? Apologize?" "We expect fairness," Ashford said flatly. "But let's not pretend. This isn't debate. It's theater. And you already sold the tickets." The Marnexian councillor grunted, low and amused. "You came all this way to deliver complaints? You should have sent a recording." "Perhaps we were generous too long," said another voice from the circle, a Sahari delegate, golden-skinned with iridescent eyes. "Perhaps your usefulness expired." Ashford scanned the chamber. A few councillors avoided eye contact. Others watched with detached amusement. The divide was obvious, lines already drawn. "There is still a path forward," Ashford said. "You rescind this decree. We negotiate, properly, as equals, or this council declares itself a dominion of tyranny, and that choice will echo beyond this chamber." Laughter broke from a Krasal representative, hulking, spiked, more beast than diplomat. "Humans threatened now? With what? Farming machines? Lecture harder. Maybe that'll scare us." Relzar raised a hand and the voices fell quiet. "This council appreciates Earth's contributions," he said, measured. "But your world is no longer central, no longer essential. You resist integration, you delay progress, and now, you posture." A flick of his hand and holographic documents materialized, projections of Earth's economic output, fleet readiness, political instability. "Your strength is a myth. You've enjoyed sovereignty longer than most council members. That era ends now." Ashford stepped closer to the central podium. His tone shifted, cooler, sharper. "This was always the plan, wasn't it? Make Earth believe it had a seat while you hollowed out the floor beneath it. You didn't want dialogue today. You wanted a photo." Relzar tilted his head. "Is this your final plea, Chancellor?" Ashford looked around the chamber. The smirks, the glares, the averted gazes. His own team standing silent behind him, waiting. He exhaled through his nose. "No." Then louder, clearer. "Enough." The word landed like stone in water. No raised voice, No drama, just finality. You weren't here to listen. You were here to finish the script. You built a stage, pointed the lights, and called it diplomacy. This isn't a council. It's a courtroom. And you already wrote the verdict. Relzar stared back without blinking. Very well. He turned to the assembly. By directive of the High Council, and with majority support, Earth is hereby designated non-compliant. The privileges of membership are revoked. Their representatives stand in violation of Council accord. He gestured, and guards began to move. 6 of them from separate entryways, coordinated and slow. Chancellor Malcolm Ashford, Relzar declared. You and your delegation are under detainment for sedition and obstruction of Council directives. You are hereby remanded until further assessment. Ashford didn't move. Behind him, Keller and Dawes shifted slightly. Not in panic, just bracing. The guards advanced, not rushing, but deliberate, synchronized. Ceremonial armor gleaming, no weapons drawn. This wasn't arrest. It was spectacle, humiliation dressed as order. The lead guard stepped forward and held out a pair of restraints, long curved bands of glowing alloy, unlike any human cuffs. Elegant, alien. Ashford glanced down at the restraints, then slowly raised his hands. Make sure your report includes how polite we were, he said dryly. Keller smirked, just once. As the restraints snapped into place around Ashford's wrists, he raised his arms slightly, adjusting the collar of his diplomatic robe. A flick of his finger brushed the lapel communicator, small, discreet. To anyone watching, he looked like he was just fixing the fit. But the signal was sent. Begin it, he muttered under his breath. The guards turned the humans around and began escorting them from the chamber. No struggle, no resistance, just the slow walk of men already outnumbered but not outplayed. Above them, Relzar watched silently. He had no idea what had just started. Far from the citadel of Accord, Admiral Henrik Sato stood at the center of the UED's underground command deck, eyes locked on a single pulsing icon on the screen in front of him. The signal had come through, clean, coded, unmistakable. Chancellor Ashford had made the call. He turned to his comms officer. Confirm it. The young lieutenant, pale under the low red lights of the ops room, gave a single nod. It's real, sir. Phrase and cadence match. Operation Enough is green. Sato didn't hesitate. Do it. Across the chamber, a flurry of coordinated movement kicked off like a synchronized storm. Operators swiped across floating hollow panels, lights flared, and encrypted command trees rippled through secure lines across the quadrant. Patch through to Commanders Halden, Moretz, and Grimm, Sato ordered. A panel slid open, revealing 3 split feeds, each one showing a stern-faced man framed by the quiet tension of distant outposts. Halden stood aboard his vessel, shadows from a crimson-hued nebula streaking across the bulkhead behind him. Moretz, older and broader, stood in front of a tactical projection glowing against the rough stone walls of an underground command shelter carved into some forgotten moon. Grimm, lean and sharp-eyed, sat in the pilot's chair of a stealth carrier veiled beneath the upper clouds of a pale blue giant. Sato didn't offer greetings. It started. Coordinates are set. Go. Halden gave a crisp nod. About time. Moretz cracked his neck. Copy. We've waited long enough. Grimm grinned faintly. Let's wake the galaxy. The feeds cut. The command deck rumbled beneath Sato's boots as launch sequences began. No one needed a second order. They'd been ready for this. Every part of the operation had been rehearsed in silence, behind closed doors, under dummy protocols and phantom drills. An analyst looked up from her console, eyes wide with tension. They're all moving, sir. Every ship's in position. This storm's officially rolling. Sato didn't look away from the map as the UED's full strike package lit up like a storm front. It won't take that long. In the Council's high chamber, the discussion had shifted from formalities to something more personal. I warned you they'd posture, said the Jevakari delegate, her feathers flicking in visible irritation. Humans are emotionally unstable. They pretend they're rational, but they hold grudges like tribal packs. The Marnexian exhaled through the slits in his mask. Grudges? Or memory? Another counselor, gray-skinned with translucent ridges along his spine, leaned in. They've been quiet too long. You think that was surrender? Relzar raised his hand. They lack the reach. Their fleets are scattered. Their resources strained. At best, they'll issue complaints. At worst, they'll try some symbolic protest. Either way, it ends here. The Vexari tilted his head slightly. And if they don't stop? They can't reach us, Relzar said flatly. Even if they tried, our perimeter defenses would halt them before they breached Council airspace. Around the chamber, some counselors exchanged glances. A few kept their gaze on the floor, uncomfortable but silent. They weren't ready to speak against the tide. Not yet. Then the chamber trembled. At first it was subtle. A vibration in the floor panels, a low hum in the columns. Then a sharp tone pierced the air. An alert. Not ceremonial, not scheduled. Operators burst into the chamber, eyes wide, voices rushed. Council perimeter has been breached! Another followed. Multiple contacts, coming from dead space sectors. They're already inside the second ring. What is happening? One of the senior aides asked, voice raised. An older counselor turned to the operator. Who is it? The operator swallowed hard. The humans, High Lord. Their fleet. It's here. Relzar turned to the chamber doors as the lights shifted to red. Above the station, the void erupted. Sato's fleet didn't arrive from the main corridor. They emerged from the dark, from blind spots, abandoned lanes, and gravitational dead zones, mapped by human engineers who had spent years preparing for this exact moment. There was no warning, no build-up, just sudden presence. Dozens of warships cut through space with sharp, aggressive intent. The lead carrier, a red, angular titan named Excalibur, pierced the orbital grid before the Council defenses could realign. Sato stood on the command deck of the Excalibur, hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the shifting battle map in front of him, colored vectors, ship markers, heat zones, all in motion. Targeting aligned, came Captain Reed's voice through the comms. His face flickered on the side display, lit by firelight from his bridge. We're set on their outer wall. On another feed, Captain Ewan leaned forward from his command chair, shadows cutting across his sharp features. Their batteries are scrambling, sloppy deployment. Looks like they didn't expect visitors. They didn't expect to bleed today, Sato replied. Let's change that. He turned toward his comms officer. Signal the strike. Execute the wedge. Reed's voice came back without hesitation. With pleasure. The human fleet shifted instantly, splitting into 3 angles of assault. Reed's formation dove on the orbital batteries flanking the station's upper towers. Ewan's group cut straight through the shield perimeter, tearing past diplomatic bays. Sato's spearhead surged toward the station's central axis. Focus fire on the relay bands, Ewan ordered from his post. We blind them before we bruise them. In the black, flashes ignited like a thunderstorm. The Council's defense turrets began to stir, but too late. Their predictive arrays were misfiring, their timing off. Human ships were already weaving through patterns they hadn't accounted for. One of the station's upper towers erupted in a plume of fire and fractured alloy. Debris spun outward as alarms flashed across the Council grid. What was supposed to be an untouchable ring of power had become a fractured shell. Defense systems staggered between protocols. Council warships clustered in hesitation, still reacting instead of responding. And Sato? He was just getting started. The first tower crumbled, and the rest of the station lit up like a hornet's nest. Batteries rotated, beams fired in blind arcs, but the humans were already threading through the gaps, shifting lines faster than the defenses could compute. On the Excalibur's command deck, Admiral Henrik Sato didn't move from his post. His eyes stayed fixed on the roiling battlefield map, lines of red and blue colliding, breaking, reforming. Outer layers breaking, came Captain Reed's voice from his feed, static warping the edges. Behind him, crewmen shouted and sparks flew across the bridge. They're collapsing in on themselves. Keep pressing, Sato answered. Don't give them time to breathe. Another voice cut in, Captain Ewan. His tone was clipped, precise. "They're shifting a cluster to cover the southern arc. If we swing through, we'll take the brunt." Reed barked a laugh through the comms. "Since when do we back off from a swing?" Ewan didn't rise to the bait. "It's a choke point. Their fire will stack." Sato raised his hand slightly, silencing both feeds. "Then we stack harder. Drive through." For a moment, nothing but the distant thrum of engines filled the bridge. Then Reed's grin split across his battered face. "Copy that. Punching through." In the black, his wing veered hard into the kill zone. Energy flares painted the void, bursts slamming into human hulls, shields sparking, plates peeling. And still the ships surged forward, refusing to break. At the last second, the formation fractured, splitting into a scatter that tore past the overlapping lines. Council turrets, primed for a single clustered target, fired into empty space. Human ships reformed on the other side, hammering the turrets' exposed flanks until their cores burst apart in spinning shards. Inside the council chamber, the thunder of the battle carried through the walls like a heartbeat. Relzar gripped the railing of his platform, mandibles tightening. "Contain them!" the Jevakari delegate hissed, feathers twitching. "Their numbers are not vast. They should already be splintered." A Marnexian aide sprinted into the chamber, his armored chest plate scuffed. "High Consul, some of the comm signals are failing. We cannot reach the Third Fleet. The channels are interfered." Another operator shouted from his console. "The signals, they're blocked. No, wait, some are slipping through." Councillors leaned forward, panic breaking their mask of arrogance. The Vexari delegates' tendrils writhed in agitation. "Interference? From primitives?" "Not interference," Relzar snapped. "Defiance!" He turned to his inner circle. "Send the personal wings. Now, we don't wait for authorization." Across the chamber, a few councillors exchanged uneasy looks. Some kept silent, eyes betraying the fear they didn't dare speak aloud. On the human side, the fleet was cutting deeper. The Excalibur drove its spear into the central ring, Hammer-class frigates flanking, tearing lines in the plating. "Contact left," Ewan's voice snapped through. "Council ships pivoting from the east. If they close, we'll be boxed." His image flickered on the display, jaw tight, eyes calculating. "Admiral, if we pivot now, we can evade." Reed's feed crackled in. "Evasion's not going to win us this fight. We hit harder than they can count." Sato didn't blink. "Stay the course. Break their circle." Ewan's lips tightened, but he gave a sharp nod. "Understood." On screen, human vessels swung wide, then collapsed inward in perfect timing, slicing into the council formation from two sides. Caught between crossfire, the alien ships twisted in panic, colliding with each other, their perfect symmetry turned into chaos. A second station tower ruptured, venting fire and bodies into the dark. The humans pressed. Inside the chamber, panic shifted into argument. "They'll break through!" one councillor shouted, eyes darting. Another slammed his hand against the console. "Then why aren't reinforcements here?" The operator at the comms swallowed. "We're detecting outgoing signals. Some are being jammed, but others made it through. The console's line was among them." Relzar's eyes narrowed. "Good. Then aid is on the way." The Sahari delegate leaned back, voice cold. "If they survive long enough to arrive." Relzar's mandibles flared, but he didn't answer. His gaze fixed on the holographic projection above the chamber, human ships carving paths where none should exist. Back aboard the Excalibur, alarms barked in rapid succession. A comms officer turned to Sato, voice urgent. "We intercepted transmissions, Admiral. Several signals from inside the chamber, some jammed, but others clean. Reinforcements will come." Her face glowed pale in the red lights. "But we know who sent them." Sato's expression didn't shift. He spoke with the weight of stone. "Good. Inform the other commanders." He stepped closer to the viewport, watching another council cruiser break apart in fire. His fists clenched, voice low and final. "This circus ends today." The second tower's fireball still burned against the void when the next storm arrived. Sensors screamed across the Excalibur's bridge, warning of fresh signatures boiling out of subspace lanes. Reinforcements, council fleets, heavy wings called in from loyalist strongholds, had come to break the human advance. "Contacts!" Captain Reed's voice cut through the comms, the feed shaking with movement. "Full formations, dropping in on our starboard." On another channel, Captain Ewan's face appeared, pale in the light of his tactical screens. "Multiple groups. They're trying to box us between the station and their relief wings." Around him, the map lit up with red clusters blooming like malignant growths. Any other fleet would have panicked. Not Sato. He stood anchored, arms folded behind his back, gaze cutting straight through the chaos. "Hold formation," Sato said, calm, almost casual. "They'll expect us to scatter. We don't." Reed laughed, a raw edge in his tone. "You're telling me we let them think they've got us cornered?" "Exactly," Sato answered. "Bleed them before they close the jaws." Human ships braced as the new fleet surged in. Council vessels, long and spined, cascaded fire from their flanks. Missiles streaked in swarms, beams lashed across the darkness. Explosions peppered the outer edge of the human wedge. But instead of breaking, Sato's fleet pivoted like a blade, forcing the enemy fire into angles where their own crossfire struck friendly hulls. The Council's neat formations tore into each other in the confusion. On the bridge of the Excalibur, a young sensor officer snapped her head up. "Admiral, secondary spikes, more inbound." Sato didn't even turn. "That's ours." The void ripped open again. 3 more human fleets burst into the theater, arcs of light tearing across the black, as if space itself had been split open by force. The shockwave of their arrival rolled through the battlefield. For a heartbeat, the Council reinforcements hesitated. Formations wavered, command channels flooded with disbelief. Then the killing began. Halden's squadron descended like a storm from high orbit, hulls glowing from the re-entry burn. His ships drove straight into the back ranks of the Council's reinforcement wings, tearing through unprepared cruisers. Explosions cascaded outward as 1, 2, then 5 alien vessels buckled under the hammering impact of sustained fire. In seconds, the rear guard was no longer a formation. It was a graveyard. "Rear lines open!" Halden's voice thundered over comms. "We're cutting straight through. Push them forward, into the guns of the others." Moretz answered before Sato could. His heavy cruisers lumbered into the fray like juggernauts, each salvo dropping with the weight of mountains. Their barrages punched holes clean through the enemy wall, collapsing entire wings in a roar of flame and spinning debris. The Council's midline fractured, shattering into broken shards as officers screamed for regrouping. Moretz's gravel voice growled through the channel. "Hold the gap. Drive them into the dirt." From beneath the station's shadow, Grim made his move. His stealth carriers surged upward in a vertical climb, engines flaring as their strike wings unleashed coordinated fire. They carved into the enemy's underbelly, rupturing shields and detonating reactors. One Council dreadnought erupted in a sphere of light so bright it blinded half the grid for a full second. Grim's calm voice cut through the storm. Lower flank gutted. They're bleeding out. The alien reinforcements staggered, boxed from all sides, trapped between hammers they never saw coming. Their so-called surprise was dismembered before it even had a chance to swing. "Form the pincer," Halden ordered across the open net. "Crush the stragglers between us." "Already on it," Grim replied, his tone sharp. "Cutting their escape routes." "Then we finish this fast," Moretz growled. Reed's laughter came ragged through the comms as his own ships pressed the attack. "God, I love being early to a funeral." On the Excalibur, Sato's eyes narrowed as his fleet enveloped the Council wings, every maneuver precisely where he had envisioned it. No survivors for this act. Cut them down. The order hit like fuel poured on fire. Human ships surged in every vector, weaving impossible patterns, breaking ranks only to reform in lethal synchronization. They struck at blind spots, slipped through firing arcs, vanished, then reappeared with killing intent. Council ships, once disciplined, fired wild, colliding with each other in the confusion. Every turn brought another detonation. Every gap was exploited. What was meant to be an ambush had become a slaughter, and in that slaughter the legend of humanity was carved deeper into the bones of the galaxy. Inside the council chamber, the scene was chaos in a different way. Holographic monitors filled the air, showing the unraveling disaster outside. Ships burned, allies screamed across channels, reinforcements shattered before they could stabilize. One counselor clutched his mantle, voice shrill. "We must evacuate now. Call our transports. Get us clear before—" Another slammed a clawed hand against the table. "Cowardice. We hold this station. We call again for aid. More fleets will come." The Jevakari delegate's feathers bristled as she stared at the monitors. "More fleets? Look at them. Your reinforcements are ash before they even arrive." The Vexari's tendrils writhed, voice low and venomous. How did they know? How could they have prepared for this? The operator at the comms turned pale, his voice breaking. The humans. They anticipated the jump vectors. They're cutting through like they knew every angle. Another counselor shook his head in disbelief. What? How they knew? Relzar's mandibles snapped shut, face rigid. They can bleed us, but they will not take this chamber. We stand. We resist. Call again for reinforcements. I want every loyal fleet in the sector. But High Consul, one aide started. Do it, Relzar roared, slamming the railing with both hands. The chamber dissolved into frantic activity, some delegates demanding escape, others clinging to defiance. The split was clear. Panic on one side, arrogance on the other. And through it all, the humans outside drove closer, each strike hammering the inevitability of what was coming. Back in the black, the Council's so-called relief force had been reduced to burning wreckage. Human ships roared through the debris fields, breaking what remained of enemy order. Where the aliens had brought structure and doctrine, the humans answered with raw ingenuity. Maneuvers no simulator had trained for, moves no doctrine allowed. And every time, it worked. On the Excalibur's bridge, the comms filled with clipped reports of victory. Reed's booming laugh, UN's curt confirmations, Holden's steady updates, Moretz's gravel voice giving the count of destroyed wings, Grimm's sharp commands as his carriers tore upward through the chaos. Sato didn't need to answer them all. He simply watched, eyes narrowed, as the Council's vaunted reinforcements disintegrated before the combined weight of humanity. And with calm certainty, he spoke one line into the comms, carried to every captain in range. Now we tighten the noose. The battlefield was already littered with burning wrecks when the Council reinforcements tried to rally for a second push. The void around the station churned with wreckage, splintered hulls, shattered towers, glowing trails of debris spiraling into the dark. But the fight wasn't done. More clusters of ships drove in, desperate to break the human wedge before it reached the station's core. On the Excalibur's command deck, Admiral Henrik Sato leaned over the shifting battle map. Red marks bloomed on the flanks, gathering for another encirclement. Blue markers, human ships, pushed hard, thinned but relentless. Fresh groups, outer rim, reported Grimm, his voice sharp over comms. His feed flickered with sparks behind him as his carrier rattled from near misses. They're trying to reform a wall. Halden cut in, calm even under fire. A wall's only as good as the first crack. Reed's voice followed, laughter laced with strain. Then let's make it a canyon. The human fleet shifted as one. Moretz's cruisers rolled forward, broadside batteries hammering in unison, tearing the first row of enemy ships apart. Flashes ignited across the flank as alien vessels folded inward, fire cascading between them like dominoes. At the same time, Grimm's stealth wings struck upward from the debris fields below, gutting engines and detonating reactors from behind. Explosions staggered the formation, breaking the wall before it had even braced. They're bleeding, Moretz growled. Keep hitting! But the Council fought back with fury. Lines of spiked warships surged forward, beams crossing the void in a net of fire. One human frigate vanished in a bloom of white as its hull cracked in half. Another spun, venting bodies and flame, before slamming into an enemy cruiser and taking both down in fire. For every alien ship that burned, a human crew paid the cost. Pressure's stacking, Ewan snapped across comms. If they lock that door, we're the ones trapped inside. Sato's voice was calm, steady, the anchor in the storm. Then don't let them close it. Find the break. And the break came. Halden's squadron, smaller and faster, feinted retreat, drifting just long enough to bait the pursuing council flank. Then, with a sudden turn, his ships spun into the blind arc of the larger vessels. They dove under the firing lines, unleashed concentrated fire into the exposed reactor housings, and split the flank clean in half. Alien ships tore away from each other in panic, colliding as they tried to stabilize. "There's the hole," Halden barked. "Tear it wider before they blink." Sato didn't hesitate. "All wings, drive through. Make it ugly, make it fast, we're going in." The order ripped through the fleet like a current. Engines flared, formations dissolved into a rushing surge. Human ships clawed into the breach, weaving between burning hulks, cutting their way to the station. The void lit with overlapping detonations as council defenders broke under the weight of the charge. The once impenetrable perimeter fractured into rubble, and the humans forced their spear point into the heart of the defense grid. On the citadel of Accord, chaos ruled the chamber. The floor shook under bombardment, consoles sparked, and the holographic displays screamed red with losses. Operators cried over each other, reports blending into a chorus of disaster. "They're through the perimeter!" one shouted, his crest rising in panic. "We can't contain them!" Another voice broke, high and desperate. "They'll breach the station itself! High Consul, we must evacuate!" Councillors scrambled from their seats, robes dragging across the floor as they ran for the exits. A tall Zayari delegate shoved an aide aside, shouting for his personal guard to ready his transport. Another clutched his mantle close, muttering prayers as he stumbled for the docking hall. The chamber that once held arrogant certainty was dissolving into terror. Relzar stood unmoving at the dais, his emerald segments gleaming under the flickering lights. His lidless eyes twitched, watching councillors scatter. His mandibles flared in rage. "Cowards! Return to your seats!" None listened. The chamber doors swung wide as guards spilled through, escorting fleeing delegates toward the hangars. The Jevakari's violet feathers scattered as she darted from her chair, talons scraping against the floor tiles as she pushed past others to escape. The Vexari's tendrils lashed as he barked orders, demanding his escort clear a path. "Prepare my vessel," one cried. "Now, now." The chamber walls shuddered with a blast, the floor quaking as smoke drifted through the vents. A console exploded near the back row, sending shards across the chamber. The panicked mass surged harder toward the exits. Relzar's hand slammed against the railing, voice booming above the panic. "Enough! I am the High Consul! You will not run from me!" Another blast ripped through the chamber wall, showering sparks across the floor. The lights flickered, consoles sputtered, and a fresh wave of councillors bolted for the exits. Relzar's mandibles clicked furiously as he turned to his attendants. "Ready my ship. Now. I will not be trapped in this ruin." The chamber was chaos, some councillors vanishing into the corridors in blind terror, others lingering in defiance, shouting that more reinforcements would come, that the humans would break before the end. The split between arrogance and fear was stark, played out in real time before the storm closing in on their walls. And outside, Sato's fleet was driving straight for them. The breach was open. The Council's defenses lay splintered, their reinforcements gutted, and still the human fleet pressed harder. Where hesitation might have taken root, Admiral Henrik Sato filled it with purpose. His voice cut across the comms like steel, driving the final push. "Clear me a path," he ordered, eyes locked on the projection of the citadel of Accord, its shields flickering in broken arcs. "We're not circling this any longer." Reed's voice snapped back, raw and sharp, already hammering. "You'll have your gap in 30 seconds. "Make it 20, Grimm said, calm as ice. "Let's make them choke on it." His stealth wings flared upward, delivering brutal strikes to the last defense satellites, leaving trails of molten wreckage. Moretz's cruisers charged forward with the subtlety of thunder. Platings peeling. One more barrage and you're through. The human fleet shifted like a single organism, every ship weaving in calculated chaos. They dove through wreckage fields, using burning husks as cover, looping through the blind arcs of the Council's surviving batteries. The station's predictive arrays faltered. Every maneuver the humans pulled was a step outside the algorithms. Improvisation turned into art. The wedge deepened. Flashes of fire opened into a corridor, a raw, burning scar cutting straight toward the Council's heart. On the Excalibur's command deck, the tactical overlays screamed red warnings, but Sato didn't waver. "That's our lane. We take it." His crew hesitated for half a beat, just long enough to register the madness of what was coming. Then engines surged, pushing the warship forward, dragging escorts in its wake. Yuan's voice cut through the comms feed, cold and skeptical. "You're driving us straight into the hull." "That's the point," Sato replied. "They built a wall. We're the hammer." The station grew larger in the viewport, its towers bristling with half-functional guns. Plasma fire raked across the Excalibur's bow, sparking showers across the deck, but the carrier pushed on. Shields screamed. Hull plating groaned. Still, the humans advanced, speed mounting with each heartbeat. On the lower decks, Marines braced against the shock of the charge. Helmets clicked into place, weapons magnetized to their armor. The air vibrated with a sense of finality. One young soldier muttered under his breath, "We're actually doing this." Another barked a laugh. "Brace for it. This is how legends start." The Excalibur struck. The weakened shields buckled like glass, collapsing in ripples of light. Metal screamed as the warship rammed through the outer ring, smashing aside smaller diplomatic transports like toys. Explosions flared in its wake, bursts of fire and twisted alloy scattering into the void. The Excalibur tore into the docking bays, crushing platforms and snapping spires in its path, before grinding to a shuddering halt, locked into the station's gut. The impact rocked the chamber of the Council itself. Delegates were thrown from their seats as the floor heaved. Panels shattered, lights blew out, and the deep, resonant groan of tearing steel echoed through the structure. For the first time in generations, the station, once untouchable, felt mortal. In the Council chamber, disbelief reigned. One councillor shrieked, "Impossible! No ship could breach here!" Another clawed at a console, shouting, "Where are the defenses? Where are the reinforcements?" Relzar's lidless eyes twitched in disbelief. His mandibles clenched as he watched the monitors flicker with the impossible truth. The humans had driven a warship through the walls of the Council itself. His attendants froze, waiting for orders, but even he seemed momentarily stripped of words. On the Excalibur's bridge, alarms screamed across every console, but Sato stood unshaken. He turned to his comms officer. "Signal the fleet. Keep the wolves off our back. We finish this inside." Then he faced his Marine commander, a broad man in scarred armor, Major Anton Murdoch. "You know your mission." Murdoch cracked a grin, fierce and defiant. "Oh, I know. Kick the doors in, drag out our man, and hang their pride on the wall." He slammed his visor shut and waved his men forward. "All right, boys, you heard the Admiral. Time to crash their party. Move." Dozens of armored Marines surged out of the warship's ruptured hull, weapons raised, boots pounding across the scorched docking bay. Smoke curled around them, mingling with sparks and fire from ruined transports. The hiss of sealing suits, the thump of mag boots on metal, all blended into the rhythm of a single charge. The station's defenders rallied fast. Alien soldiers poured into the bay, armored forms bristling with energy weapons. They opened fire, bolts of plasma streaking across the smoke, but the humans pushed forward without pause, returning fire in short, brutal bursts. Murdoch led from the front, vaulting broken plating, barking quick commands. Sato followed in their wake, sidearm drawn, eyes fixed on the corridors ahead. The warship behind him rumbled as its guns thundered outward, pounding anything that dared approach the breach. Inside the Council chamber, panic rippled like wildfire. Delegates screamed as the first reports came in. "Human boarding parties, inside the station." One councillor collapsed into his chair, trembling. Another grabbed his counterpart by the arm, voice breaking. "They'll come here. They'll come for us." Relzar finally found his voice, fury spilling over his arrogance. "Seal the chamber. Arm every guard. They will not take this seat of power. But even as he spoke, the rumble of battle spread through the walls, the sound of boots, gunfire, and humanity's arrival echoing closer with every breath. The impossible had become real. The humans weren't just at the gates, they were inside. Gunfire cracked through the station's arteries as the Excalibur's Marines fanned outward, pushing deeper into the structure. Smoke and sparks bled from every corridor. The Council's proud bastion groaned under the weight of battle, its sterile halls turned into killing grounds. Major Anton Murdoch barreled forward with his men, boots slamming against scorched plating. His voice carried over the comms, gruff and eager. "Sweep every junction. Don't leave a single rat hole unchecked." His squad answered with curt affirmatives, weapons lighting up the narrow passages in short, brutal bursts. On the other side of the station, Admiral Henrik Sato advanced with a smaller detachment, eyes locked on the marker guiding him toward Chancellor Malcolm Ashford's last known position. His face was unreadable, voice calm in the storm. "Keep it tight. The moment we find him, their house of cards collapses." They rounded a corner and slammed headlong into a squad of council guards, hulking Trescari, their forearms wielding curved shock pikes that crackled with energy. The aliens charged with snarls that echoed off the steel walls. "Hold!" Sato barked. The Marines dropped to one knee and unleashed controlled bursts. 2 Trescari went down in sprays of sparks and ichor. Another leapt over the bodies, pike swinging wide. Sato sidestepped and fired point blank, the bolt tearing through the alien's chest. The last hesitated just long enough for a Marine to wrench a broken conduit from the wall and drive it through its throat. Improvised, brutal, effective, human ingenuity at its rawest. Beyond the wreckage of bodies, the reinforced doors of a holding chamber loomed. Inside, muffled voices barked orders. Sato raised a fist, signaling silence. He kicked the door panel. Nothing. Then one of his Marines, Corporal Cord, smirked, pulled a portable torch from his pack, and jammed it into the seams. Sparks showered as the metal hissed. Seconds later, the door clanged open. Ashford and his crew stood shackled to a restraint chair, flanked by 2 guards. His robes were torn, his face marked with bruises, but his eyes burned steady. Sato strode in first, firing twice without breaking stride. Both guards dropped. A Marine rushed forward and tore the restraints free. Ashford flexed his wrists, meeting Sato's gaze. "You took your time," he muttered. Sato allowed the ghost of a smile. "We brought the whole damn fleet." Ashford grabbed a discarded weapon, steadying himself. "Then let's use it." Before they could move further, Murdoch's voice cut over the comms, ragged with static and gunfire. "Admiral, we've got the counselors boxed in their chamber. Doors sealed, guards thick. Need a way through." Sato turned to Ashford, then back to his men. "We don't wait on permission. That chamber opens today. Murdoch, keep your men ready." The humans carved their way across the station's guts, Ashford moving shoulder to shoulder with Sato, blasting through pockets of defenders. Every step was another reminder of the arrogance that had led the council here. Meanwhile, Murdoch crouched at the blast doors of the chamber. His Marines were stacked along the walls, trading fire with the guards who had barricaded themselves inside. Plasma bolts scorched the metal, leaving deep burns. One of his sergeants, Ayala, shoved a small device into Murdoch's hand. "Charges won't cut it clean. Too thick." Murdoch grinned. "Who said anything about clean?" He pulled a portable fusion cutter from his harness and snapped it to a console beside the door. Sparks flew as he gutted the panel, rerouting power lines with the casual flair of a mechanic stealing a car. Wires twisted together, conduits overloaded, and the chamber door's locking bolts blew outward in a violent screech. "Doors open," Murdoch growled. "Let's crash their council." The Marines stormed in. Gunfire roared across the vast chamber, ricocheting off marble floors and polished steel. The council's personal guards fell fast, some cut down in place, others dropping weapons in surrender when the tide turned too swiftly. Blood, smoke, and shattered finery stained what had once been the galaxy's highest seat of order. At the center, High Consul Relzar clutched the armrest of his elevated chair, mandibles quivering in rage. "You dare!" he spat. You think you can dictate terms here? His emerald skin caught the flicker of explosions from outside, the light painting him in sickly hues. Murdoch leveled his rifle at the dais. Sit down. You're yesterday's problem. The last guards collapsed, weapons clattering across the floor. Counselors who had plotted Earth's exploitation found themselves crawling, pleading, or frozen in stunned disbelief. The chamber that had declared humanity traitors was now surrounded by human guns. The doors at the rear burst open. Sato entered, flanked by Ashford and his Marines. Smoke trailed behind them, as if the battle itself followed in their wake. Ashford stepped forward, voice steady, commanding the room as though the chains had never been there. This ends now, Relzar snarled, rising to his feet. You are nothing but rabble. You will burn for this insolence. Sato's sidearm lifted in an instant. Sit down, he said, voice low but absolute. Relzar froze, his arrogance cracking into silence. Ashford raised his voice so every trembling counselor could hear. The council is no throne. From this day, it is a duty. Those who abused it will answer. From now on, tyranny dies here. The words hung heavy, undeniable. Marines bound the wrists of the fallen counselors. Some wailed, some cursed, but none resisted. Others, those who had lowered their eyes in shame, watched in stunned relief as Ashford claimed the dais. Sato glanced at Murdoch, then back at Ashford. For the first time in the campaign, his shoulders eased. Humanity had not only survived the Council's decree, they had reshaped it. And across the galaxy the message would spread, the day the humans said enough and made the galaxy listen. Hey there, space human. I'm really curious about your thoughts on this video. Drop a quick comment and let me know what's on your mind. Or just say hi if you prefer. Either way, I'd love to hear from you. Also, remember to check the pinned comment. Trust me, it's worth a look. Oh, and one last thing. I've chosen another video for you to watch. Just click the card here, or here if you want the whole playlist. See you there.